Hello everyone, good morning. How have you been? Before I start our discussion material today, I want to ask you something. Have you ever wondered that learning pronunciation is really important? Yeah, exactly. The accurate pronunciation is an important part of learning any language, and especially when you're learning English. The way your speech sounds can have a big impact on whether or not people understand what you are saying and their initial impression of you. The tricky thing about pronunciation is that not just a question of acquiring knowledge, it is a physical skill that you need to practice regularly. Scientists say that we develop our accent by as early as the age of 6 months as we get older and develop a mastery for our language. Our brains then focus on the performing other activities and lose that language learning plasticity. That's why when we start learning a new language as adults, it is much more difficult to get rid of our pesky accent. But don't worry, because here I am, Siti Usrul, as English education students, gonna give you some excellent tips to help you how to have better English pronunciation. Without any further ado, let's get started. First, learn to listen. Listening skills are also critical for learning pronunciation of a new language. You need to listen to native speakers and pick up on their speech patterns. Podcasts are great for getting familiar with English as it is really spoken. They are so often recorded by people in bedrooms and studies, speaking to their friend in a completely natural way. Some applications and websites like YouTube enable you to listen at half speed, which is a great way to really focus on the sounds you are hearing and understand the accent in detail. But also be mindful of who you are watching. Try to watch good English speakers or speakers who are considered fluent native speakers. Otherwise, you could be learning bad or incorrect pronunciation. Second tips, notice how your mouth and lips move. A huge part of pronunciation is making the muscle in your mouth work differently than they are used to. Your lips, tongue, throat, and jaw are all involved in making the sounds. I remember when I was learning English, I would sometimes notice that my mouth felt sore from speaking in English all day. That's a good thing. My muscles were working differently than they were used to, and they were getting stronger. I have some tips for you to practicing move your mouth differently. Watch yourself pronouncing words using a mirror. This will allow you to notice how your mouth is moving and help you to correct yourself. Think about your mouth. In English, we usually use a more open mouth position as opposed to a closed mouth position that many languages use. I also think about how you are using the tongue. Watch videos that explain pronunciation. This one by George Herding is great, but remember that she is speaking with an Australian accent. Here's another one on American English. This can help you to think more carefully about your mouth. And then, the third tips, record yourself. One of the best ways to correct your English pronunciation is to listen to native speaker and compare your pronunciation to them. But often it's hard to really hear ourselves properly when we are speaking because we're busy thinking about what to say and how to say it. That's why it can be really helpful to record yourself, and that way you can go back and listen to hear where you get stuck or where your pronunciation was significantly different from a native speaker. Here are some ideas for how to record yourself. Record yourself shadowing a podcast, then play it back at the same time as the podcast. Take note of the words or sounds you pronounce differently. Practice those sounds. Record yourself pronouncing sounds you find difficult. Then listen to a native English speaker saying them. What is the difference? Recording yourself is also great for showing your progress. Look back months later and see how much better you are after all your practice. Try even using a video recording to see the way that your mouth moves. You don't need any special tools to do this. Yeah, the microphone and video memo app on your phone will work great. This important thing is that you get into the habit of recording yourself speaking and then adjusting your pronunciation. Fourth, talk to yourself. Express your thoughts aloud in English and have a conversation with yourself. This is a great way to practice your pronunciation. It will make you more comfortable when it comes to speaking with others in English. Of course, you may feel a little crazy at first, but it will become more natural over time as well pronouncing words correctly. Besides, talking to yourself is actually a normal thing to do, and in fact has a number of benefits. Dr. Jessica Nicolosi, a clinical psychologist based in New York, says, if we speak out loud, it forces us to slow down our thoughts and process them differently because we engage the language centers of our brain. She explained, by talking to ourselves, we become more deliberate and this creates a slower process to think, feel, and act, instead of being bombarded by our thoughts. Therefore, slowing your speaking down will give you the time to recognize which words or sounds that you are having trouble pronouncing correctly. You can then try to correct and improve yourself accordingly. Fifth, use podcasts. That's my favorite one. Podcasts are fantastic for learning English in general and are great when it comes to practicing your English pronunciation. Listening to native speakers give you a bit of a guide that you can use for your own pronunciation. Here's how I would suggest that you use podcasts to improve your pronunciation. First, listen to the podcast, of course. Get a sense of what it means. First off, follow along with a transcript to make sure that you catch every word. You can't pronounce a word unless you know what the word is. Next, underline words you don't know. Find the words you're unfamiliar with and underline them. Try looking through a list of key vocabulary words if there is one. Listen to the podcast again. This time, listen carefully to how those words are pronounced and practice saying them yourself. Listen and repeat. This will help train the muscle in your mouth. Next, use the transcript to read out the words without the audio. That way, you can practice on your own. And finally, these tips that I can share to you, and remember that you don't have to be perfect at pronunciation. Most of us don't need to sound like a native English speaker. Your goal is probably just to be understood easily. If you can get close enough to be understood, you have won. Also remember that even native English speakers have trouble understanding other native English speakers with very strong accents. In Canada, people from rural Newfoundland have notoriously strong accents that others often have difficulty understanding. Some Scottish accents are similarly challenging to understand. So if you're going to travel to different places, some difficulty being understood is probably normal. Don't get discouraged if people don't understand you. Instead, remember that there is not really a right way to speak English. Most of all, keep trying and keep practicing. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.